This is Venezuela, the most oil-rich country in the world, and also the world's most dangerous. This is its most dangerous city, the capital, Caracas, and the most dangerous places in Caracas are the barrios, Las Minas, La Vega, Catia, 23 de Enero, and of course Petare, the black hole of the whole of Latin America. Today, we're walking here. Let's go. The barrios are a relatively recent phenomenon. This was Caracas in the 60s, no slums anywhere not in the city centre nor in the suburbs. In the 80s and 90s, nearby villages started relocating to the sparsely populated mountain slopes, where land was cheap. But everything changed at the turn of the century, when the first socialist president of Venezuela, Hugo Chavez, started granting the poor land all over the city, even the rich neighborhoods, including around his own Miraflores palace. This is the residence of the president, the stairs he takes every morning. And here's the funny thing, what kind of view do you think he enjoys from up here? Exactly, it's the barrios and other slums. They're everywhere here. Here's another poor block close by the palace, almost like a small barrio. The poor from the villages started flocking to Caracas en masse, and so the slums grew larger and larger, eventually dominating the cityscape, covering at present as much as 80% of the capital. Guys, this one might be the weirdest barrio in Caracas. It's a 25-story block of flats. There's even a helipad on top. It was never finished, but people still decided to move in. Look, some have tried to set up walls. Unbelievable conditions. Yeah, well, what are you gonna do? It's called the Tower of David, and even had a cameo in the US-produced Homeland TV series. The main hero had to lie low for a while, and while hiding he saw the everyday life of the inhabitants. But most barrios look like this, of course. Different coloured, rambling brick hovels piled up on one another. They're usually built like a Napoleon cake, layer by layer, new hovels built right on top of the old ones. This is what barrio architecture looks like. They first build one story, then they add another one on top of that, some even add a third, and a different family on each floor. There are no conventional numbers or mailboxes here. A conventional digital map is useless. So guys, look at these analog barrio maps. You've probably never seen anything like this before. To keep tabs on who lives here, the authorities have to make these cardboard barrio mock-ups. We record who lives where, what their family's like, whether they receive help from the revolutionary government, whether it's their place or not, whether they have any troubles, how well they're doing. Here we have all the information on every district, so we, the revolutionaries, always know where we're needed. It's very important. For several years now, Venezuela's been in a presidential crisis. On the one hand, there's Nicolas Maduro, president since the death of Hugo Chavez in 2013. On the other, there's Juan Guaido, who proclaimed himself acting president in 2019. They call him the Obama of Latin America, as they look alike. The US immediately recognized him as legitimate president. Latin America, apart from Bolivia, followed suit. So did the EU. Moreover, the US also granted Guaido access to billions of dollars of Venezuelan foreign assets. He was, after all, in their view, the legitimate president. The UK also gave him all the gold Maduro had moved to London. Maduro was still recognized by Russia, China, Iran, Turkey, and after some rethinking, the EU. Though not before Britain, which to this day sides with Guaido, decided to leave the bloc. As a result, Guaido has, by some estimations, as much as $30 billion worth of assets outside the country. In Venezuela, though, his accounts are frozen, so not too much play for him there. Guaido himself has been on the verge of imprisonment several times. In the summer of 2021, the Special Forces ambushed him at a car park. They almost had him, but it became way too messy. So 2 hours later, he was already giving an interview to the press. This is pure dictatorship. It's absolutely obvious who's behind this attempted arrest. Just to recap, the opposition leader in one of the most dangerous countries on earth a few years back proclaimed himself president, received the country's foreign assets, and calls for the government to be overthrown. And despite all that, he's alive, not in jail. He lives in his flat in the center of Caracas. He talks freely to the press and organizes protests from time to time. Curious thing, this Venezuelan dictatorship, isn't it? The country as a whole, meanwhile, is deprived of all of its foreign assets and is subject to a huge number of US sanctions. So consider this: to get the necessary medicine, COVID vaccines for example, Venezuela needs dollars. To get the dollars, it needs to sell some of its oil. But under the sanctions, nobody will trade with it. And even if they went against the sanctions and bought it, the dollars would immediately get frozen in the US banks. The sad upshot of all this is that Venezuela is running out of medicine and food and much, much more. The underground in Caracas has recently been made free simply because there's no paper for the tickets. There's simply nothing to print them on. The escalators don't work, not only in the underground, all over the country. It almost seems like the escalators here are just for decoration. None of them work. The underground in Caracas is fairly new though. The trains are really modern, even the AC's working. They're quiet both in terms of noise and in terms of people. That isn't that surprising. The French built this system and these trains. Paris famously has one of the most advanced underground systems in the world. There's even a line with driverless trains. But in the last year, the Caracas underground has become a mess. More than half the trains are out of order, the waits are terrible, and at the weekends, stations are closed altogether. Filth, stench, and of course, crime. Do you hear that siren? We wanted to wait for it to end so we could film in silence, but it was going on for more than 20 minutes, and there was no end to it. Some shop nearby was being robbed. People are calmly walking by. It's whatever. This ATM's obviously out of order. Almost all of them are. Again, it's because there's no paper to print on, and most foreign credit cards won't work anyway because of the sanctions. The shortages are everywhere. We're overtaking a car on the road and look at the wheels. There's simply no rubber for him to buy. And this, believe it or not, is an ambulance. This is in Maracaibo. This is how they transport patients, because there are no other cars. They just get a pickup truck, put a bed in, and the patient goes on top, and a guy holding an umbrella to give at least some shade. Here's a pharmacy. The shelves are almost empty. We can see that there's hardly anything, just some detergents. Of the medicines on the shelves, almost all are just alcohol-based liquids for disinfecting wounds. There are solitary bottles of water on the counters, some juice. Look, the shampoos are spread out so that they cover the shelf at least a bit. There's a lot of buzz about toilet paper in Venezuela. Look, there are whole shelves of it. Not at all in short supply, but the price is staggering. $3 to $4 a pack. So, $1 per roll. And that's when more than 50% of Venezuelans live on a minimum wage. This man's protesting against the fact that 30 million Venezuelans live on $1.6 per month. He's being a bit too grim. In 2021, it's actually about $2.5. Monthly wages here look something like this. Junior civil servant up to $10, nurse about $5, physician in a public hospital up to $25, about the same as a school teacher. A salesperson earns much better because they work for the private sector. Very well off by these standards are university professors who earn up to $100. Meanwhile, the prices are 2 to 3 times higher than in Moscow. For example, 1 pound of potatoes costs about $1.5. The prices are in dollars in the shops, although that, strictly speaking, is illegal. This is the alcohol section, no price tags here. It's because these drinks are foreign goods, so they're valued in dollars or euros, and as the rates change all the time, they decided not to bother putting on tags. which would have had to be changed the next day anyway, so you just grab the bottle and ask at the counter. There are no price tags here either. There used to be, but it's been taken off because it's a foreign good from Italy. So it's in euros and the price changes all the time. At the checkout, curiously enough, they ask for your passport number, but you can just say any 7 digits, they don't really care. Foreign currency payments in the shops are a total mess. We want to pay for our food, so we give the girl $11. But she then counts the sum again. No idea why, but they always make the conversions twice, and for some reason, it's always different. So it appears we're a few cents short. Okay then, I give her an extra $1 and tell her to keep the change. But look what she does. She gives the $1 back, and then when she can't find the money on her, she borrows a few bolivars from a colleague to make up for our deficit. Damn. The girl passed up on a whole $1, maybe as much as a week's worth of pay, and paid for us. But this is Venezuelans for you. They'll rob you blind and then turn the corner and give it all to a stranger in need. By the way, the only place in Venezuela where they refused our American dollars was, funnily enough, at the American McDonald's. Do you take dollars? No. Besides, here it's not fast food at all. There's just one guy in the kitchen and nothing's pre-cooked, so you sometimes have to wait 15 to 20 minutes for your meal. This definitely doesn't look like a normal McDonald's. Look, this is supposed to be a Big Mac. But it's visibly like 2 times smaller than usual. Seems like it does have some sort of meat inside, but it's, well, paper thin. And this is something like a quarter pounder with cheese. But inside, only a piece of meat and some onion. Just onion and meat. I think I finally have it. What this taste reminds me of. It's like an old traditional Soviet narezhnoy white bread. Instead of French fries, fried sweet potato, like everywhere else in Latin America. If you spend any time at all here, it becomes apparent that most people don't come here to eat. This couple sat here for half an hour without ordering anything. The play place is full, but look, there's no food on the tables. They didn't come to eat, they came to play in the free playground. Because it's safe here. Signs like these, "No arms allowed inside," are seen in many places here, in restaurants and in malls. But no one pays too much attention. Venezuela has a different kind of fast food. These are the most popular flatbreads in the country. This is real Venezuelan cuisine. It's called arepa. There's meat and avocado, and it's all rolled inside a flatbread. It's really very tasty. The flatbread's made of cornmeal. They say that these and the traditional fried banana they eat in place of potatoes are the main reasons Venezuelan women get so wonderfully curvy. Venezuela is a world leader when it comes to most Miss World wins. They have the most wins in history. Venezuelan women are considered the most beautiful, and not only from the front, but also from the rear. This profile of the butt curve is so distinctly Venezuelan. It's said that the fashion for big butts originated in Venezuela. It was then popularized first by Jennifer Lopez, then Kim Kardashian, but butt implants can't move like that. As you know, there are 3 things you can watch forever: fire, water, and the slow-mo of a Venezuelan girl's swaying butt. With the prices constantly changing, restaurants now have these beautiful special menus. Instead of prices, there are item codes here. Added to it is a simple, freshly printed sheet with this day's pricing. Easy to see, the price tag's been reapplied over the previous one. It used to be a different price, but then the price changed, and they simply put another sticker on top of it. Venezuela has had 6,000% inflation. The value of the national currency is not simply falling, it's crashing. What it means in practice is that in 2012, $1 was equivalent to this 2 Bolivar banknote. In 2019, $1 was valued at 20,000 Bolivar, 10,000 times more. After that, these banknotes were recalled and the currency was redenominated, so the dollar was again worth 2 Bolivars, but these were the new Bolivars. However, by the end of the year, the currency had again fallen to the rate of 20,000 Bolivars per dollar. But this 20,000 Bolivar banknote actually represents 2 million in old Bolivar. But even that's not the end of it. In a year, the dollar was worth 4.5 million Bolivar, which translates to 45 billion in old Bolivar. In other words, in 1 decade, the Venezuelan currency has collapsed by a factor of 22 billion. Imagine that, simply staggering. By the way, the government's recently again removed the zeros at the end. In an effort to try and hold down the exchange rate, the government restricted or rather almost completely banned the sale of foreign currency. Now it can only be bought on the street from guys like this. What are you guys doing here? You're trading currencies? No, man. 18 months ago, you could have faced jail time for something like this, and you still can. But they mostly let it slide now. It's common knowledge that petrol in Venezuela is practically free. This is how much they charge for 95. So, 1 US gallon costs about 8 cents. Some people, if there's no petrol man around when they fill up, just throw the money in here. Let's see. 10 bolivars, another tenner, enough to get a full tank, but so little that no one ever steals it. But there are also these signs everywhere. Sale of fuel in jerry cans, bottles, etc. is prohibited. The problem's quite simple. There's a lot of petrol in Caracas and it's very cheap. But outside Caracas, there's practically no petrol at all. A gallon costs about $4, and that's if you can get it, which isn't easy at all. In short, petrol's dirt cheap in Caracas, but outside the capital, there's almost none. And even in Caracas, it's now just your first 40 gallons this month that costs 8 cents each. Beyond that, a gallon's $2. The queues for fuel are not hours, they're days long. These people even came with their own bedding. Many of them sleep in the shade by their cars. We've been here since 4 a.m. It's now 10, so I've been here for 6 hours now. And still no progress. No, none. What progress? Nobody's getting filled up. This is a bus queue and it's just getting bigger by the second. It's going to be several blocks long. And it's because there are practically no buses left. They're now in short supply. You won't find available bus routes on this stop. The routes change all the time. You have to ask this guy. He's in charge here because on his slip of paper he has the latest timetable. He's also the one who usually collects the fares. Many drivers and conductors these days refuse to carry any money on board. Small wonder. This is what a typical city bus looks like. Very old, of course. Looks a bit like our Paz buses. No AC inside, so it's boiling here, especially considering they cram the place to the brim. The fare in Caracas is 800 bolivars, about 4 cents. Even that's not the worst option. Here's a Venezuelan-style minibus, an old pickup truck loaded with as many people as it can possibly carry. Hopefully it gets you there in the end, but at least it's 3 times cheaper, so everyone's happy. The guys in this tipper truck are packed like sardines. These people trucks unload their cargo at bus stops. I kept expecting to see the back lifted and people dumped like sand, but no. Still, even these trucks are beyond some people's means, so many just have to walk. It's awful, just awful. Our entire oil infrastructure is ruined. Our oil refining is ruined. We had the biggest refinery in the world. It used to serve all our needs. It's come to the point where the world's richest oil country has started importing oil from Iran. These are the employees of the local oil company cheering the first arriving tanker. And it's not just oil refining that has collapsed. When the country's largest hydroelectric power plant broke down, the government blamed it on US hacking. But is it also hacking that's causing old wiring all over the country to catch fire, wires to spark, power lines to go down, and power stations to go up in flames? Venezuela seems to be slowly falling apart, and it's not because of sanctions or not just because of them. In the past 20 years, the government has done little or nothing to upgrade the infrastructure, and so that infrastructure is now starting to die. Here I have some candles just in case. You never know, so the candles are there. How often do you have to use them? So, when blackouts 30 to 40 minutes an hour, it's no big deal. No one's affected too much, but over the last 2 or 3 months, there have been several blackouts lasting from 4 to 5 hours to 2 days. Vladimir Stolярov has been living in Venezuela for almost 30 years, helping Russian companies do business here. It may seem strange, but even though they've invested less here, Belarusians are better loved. This is because they worked in the social sector, building housing. I showed you the district where they built almost 5,000 flats. They also built a school here, which was named the Anton Makarenko School in gratitude. And Venezuelans say, yes, we study at the school that the Belarusians built for us. These notices are now seen in many places. Ladies and gentlemen, water is available only when there is power. So no water during blackouts. If anything does come out of the tap, it's just a small trickle. Because there's no water, there are actual water trucks going around the city. Trucks like these that pump water into houses. But that's just for the rich. Most people get their water from ditches or straight from the drain pipe by the roadside. They're saying it's because there's no power, but how can there be no power in a country with the world's largest oil reserves? It's sort of in the same vein as inviting a person to an interview with a president and not showing up. And this is a rubbish truck arriving at the dump. It's immediately swarmed. After all, there might be edible waste in the back. 6 months ago, they would buy up rotten meat at the market and soak it in vinegar or lemon. Now lemons have become a luxury, so they eat rotten meat straight from the bag. At the dumps, they're accused to the rubbish trucks, just in case there's anything only half rotten there. Grapes, potatoes. This girl got lucky. Someone threw away a half-full packet of crisps. Lucky indeed. I want to get a job, but there aren't any jobs. I don't like it here. It's bad and scary, but at least there's food. They'll still be looking for food come nightfall. But the bolivars, look, the bolivars are worthless here. They're literally chicken feed. This is a typical flat here in the barrios. This is where the children live. This is where they play. This is the cooking area. Let's see what's in the fridge. The fridge here is predictably empty. Well, half empty. Anyway, the only light in the kitchen is this lamp. And this light is the only one in the whole flat. The chandelier looks like this because light bulbs are impossible to get. I've got some corn grits, rice and pasta here. Lucia Lopez is showing the supplies for the week. There's not much protein in these, true. And now count the children living here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and the 8th one crying out of frame. The dog barking is the downstairs neighbors, and above this aluminium roof live other people, another family. One curious detail, you'll never see any wardrobes in these flats. The clothes are laid out or hung all around the flat and outside the windows. Boys are sitting outside. They're eating ice cream. Look, it's in plastic bags. It's made with the simplest ingredients. Water poured into a plastic bag with milk powder, cocoa and sugar, and then a couple of hours in the freezer. No one here has the money for a proper ice cream, of course. And the biscuits in the boys' laps are just corn flour with cocoa and sugar, not even baked. But this could well be all they have for lunch. By now you may be thinking that life in the slums is at rock bottom, but it's not. People move to the barrios for a better life. because the villages they were born in look like this. Houses made of hay and clay, no light at all, and bananas for breakfast, lunch and dinner. State price regulation has ruined agriculture. In a country where you can collect 3 harvests a year, there's now a famine. At least in the barrios, there is light, although not always. Some sanitation and water, schools for the children, and most importantly, food. Hugo Chavez started handing out food parcels and introduced free lunches. This is the kind of meal every barrio resident in Caracas can get for free. It is, in fact, one of the only ways people survive here. Today there's pasta, some mushy beans, and a slightly suspicious-looking chicken. Still, it's actually not that bad. But today, even these public canteens are slowly running out of food. Valentin Santana's taking us into the Holy of Holies in the barrio, the collectivos command center. Look, this is our base of operations. From here we control our whole territory. See the cameras? The whole barrio's covered by these cameras. So you control the whole barrio from here. The whole barrio and beyond. We also monitor the surrounding area. Here they have gas masks, military helmets, and of course, piles of guns. Don't film that, turn it off. Before we arrived, the men had clearly been told to put away their guns, but look, they didn't bother to take off the clip holsters, for example. And now Santana's taking us into his own private premises. Look at the view from his house in the barrio. He has a greenhouse with vegetables, his own pigsty and chicken coop, and even a live crocodile. You may be surprised to learn that the people in the slums almost worship the fighters of the collectivos. They're not just shooting here, they've taken on all the responsibilities of government. They're also giving people treatment, especially now when there's a pandemic and nobody has money or medicine. We're entering the hospital run by Santana and his men. This is a hospital for the locals. It has everything they need, free of charge. And now one of the men's taking us to a small house. This boy's name is Juan Carlos. Next to him is his aunt. Every barrio has a house like this, and more than just one. It is essentially a guest house with all the amenities. There's a washing machine here, and here's the kitchen. It's currently the home of Juan Carlos. These houses are for people who come to Caracas because in their hometowns, there's no medicine, or no food, or no doctors, so they need to stay in Caracas. Juan came from his village to see a doctor. He'd recently fallen and broken his arm, but that's hardly the worst of it. Juan has brain cancer. Yesterday he saw the doctor. They can't do the operation. Because they don't have, what's the right word? They don't have a needle. That's right, they don't have a needle to make the post-operation stitches. We don't have time. If they can't do my operation here, we'll have to find this needle ourselves. Yesterday we saw the doctor. And he asked for a needle to do the operation. But then he said he couldn't help me anyway, because after the operation you need to put ice on the stitches, but they don't have it. It was very hot in the hospital. I stayed there at night. No one could sleep because it was too hot. My blanket got sticky. I really don't know how this boy has the strength to tell us all that and then smile again. He only came close to tears once when he talked about his murdered father and his granny waiting for him at home. They're staying in these houses free of charge. The members of the collectivos help them with food, with transport, with everything they need. So when you next hear that it's dangerous in the barrios, well, think about that. This isn't meant to justify the robberies and murders committed by the collectivos. It's just that life is more complicated than just black and white. For example, the leader of the Tupamaro collective, Alberto Caracas, was one of the most zealous fighters against the drug mafia in Venezuela, in his own way, of course.
Alguien que vende droga no tiene derecho, ni alguien que distribuye droga, que destruye vida de niños, de ancianos, de jóvenes, no tiene derecho a nada, a la vida. Bam, bam.
Tell us what you think about the collectivos in the comments below.